But again, the big question is, how do you get started? Where do you begin? And it's hard because this is something that goes across all levels of the organization, and it also means sort of taking a new approach to communications, because traditionally there's organizations that could focus group a strapline for 4 weeks. You know, the level of sort of top-down control within organizations for communication has traditionally been pretty strict, and this is all about saying, no, we're going to the opposite extreme here. We're going to open it all up. So what I've done is sort of approach this in a way that breaks down the 3 high-level categories of what people within organizations who are being asked to look after this, who are being asked to sort of lead the charge, should be doing. And it's not a sequential list of things. It's something that you should be doing sort of in parallel. And I'm calling it the 3 E's. So I've honed it down to 1 less E than the guy from Ogilvy in New York. So, basically, and I'll get into more detail, you want to engage, you want to educate, and you want to evangelize. And I'll explain what I mean by these. By engage, I mean you have to start thinking about this from the perspective of your audience and your business objectives. And if you look at what organizations like Forrester write about how to do this within an organization, one of the most important things you'll see is that you start with the people and the objectives. You don't start with the technology. That's the last thing. And too many organizations say, we need a Facebook group. Who's going to get us a Facebook group? Who's going to do this for us? Because that's what we need. And it's not about the technology. It's about the people and the objectives. Figuring out what your business needs to say. Figure out what information your business has. Some businesses need to communicate a lot of things all the time. Some businesses don't really need to have a steady stream of information. So think about who you want to talk to. If you're talking to college students, it's a very different social media strategy than if you're talking to retirees. But both of them have plenty of opportunities to have social media strategies. And I'll look at this in a sort of micro perspective with a very small business first. And this is an example of a solution that was created by a digital agency in London because they loved this bakery that was nearby. And they all wanted to know what was fresh out of the oven. Well, the best way to do that, they figured out, was Twitter, because it was kind of not in your face like an email, but it was a good way to sort of keep up with the fact that the muffins were straight out of the oven. So they've created this little technical solution that's in the bakery where the baker, who may have his hands covered in dough and everything else, can just sort of flick the dial to what's fresh out of the oven, click the button, and it instantly sends out a Twitter feed to all the followers saying, hey, the pain au chocolat was straight out of the oven. It's a great little simple use of social media that they're actually trying to sort of license across lots of other bakeries. But you know, you're not a little bakery. You're a pretty big organization. So you need to look at engagement across a much wider range of people within your organization. So it's really important to think about this in the cross-functional way. And it's kind of a business buzzword, but social media is not just e-business. Social media is marketing. Social media is PR. Oftentimes, social media is service. It's very often sales. It's all aspects of your organization in many ways. So you need to talk to everyone in the organization. And one of the case studies that gets a lot of publicity is what Starbucks did. And it's similar to what Dell did. In fact, they were inspired by Dell in that they wanted to recreate that idea of community, because Starbucks was originally a place that sort of third place community. And when Howard Schultz came back into Starbucks, he wanted to see how to do that. And online was clearly a logical place to do it. But it was something that required a lot of people within the Starbucks organization to get behind, because what they were doing with this My Starbucks idea required lots of different stakeholders. The operational people had to be involved in saying, yes, this is a good idea, maybe this isn't such a good idea. And the director of digital strategy at Starbucks described the experience saying, getting the operational readiness in place, getting people on board was tough. We had to make a leap of faith together. And I think that's important. You know, she was the person who decided she was going to really talk to everyone who needed to be involved and really lead the charge. By the end of the first week, the site had received 100,000 visitors. And even more than that, it had gotten a lot of publicity. And publicity is a valuable thing with social media. If you look at the ROI of social media, oftentimes if you get good buzz in traditional media, that can alone pay for the investment you're making in social media. And as I was just saying, from a resource standpoint, it's very important to have not just that everyday champion, who was the person we just talked about, the director of digital strategy, but you want an executive champion too. So if your role within your organization is to lead this, you also want to go to the very top as much as you can to get someone who's going to stand behind you and watch your back. Because there are risks in social media. You are opening yourself up in a way that your organization may not be familiar with and comfortable with in the beginning. So the more that you can get someone who will stand behind you and be part of it and lead the organization in developing this, the better. In Starbucks' case, Howard Schultz, who had probably 10,000 things on his to-do list every day, was absolutely behind this. He's the CEO of Starbucks. And he personally introduced the site when it went live and really made it a big part of his press media coverage. And you want that level of participation as much as possible. If you look at successful social media, oftentimes there is an executive champion who's really willing to push it through the organization. The second E is educate. And that's, I think talking to this crowd, I'm sort of preaching to the converted, the fact that you showed up here. You're demonstrating that you're interested. And it's very important to keep up with social media because it's probably the fastest area of the web. And there are so many different websites out there. And one of the first things you should do with social media is sort of own your brand within social media sites. Because too often, you'll have to sort of chase it back to your company if someone else creates the real estate that you want. Even the DTDigital Twitter feed was a bit of an issue because someone else sort of owns DTDigital. You also need to keep up with just how to do it. And one of the great things about social media is that people who do social media professionally can't stop talking about it. So the internet is absolutely full of information about social media. There are more blogs written by social media experts than I think any other type of blog on the internet. And there's tons and tons of valuable information out there. Social Media Explorer, Church of the Customer, Conversation Agent, and certainly the DTDigital website, I would say. Spend a lot of time on the DTDigital website. Learn a lot there.